In 2018, Australia botanist and ecologist David Goodall ended his life at age 104 through euthanasia. Euthanasia is typically defined as painless killing of a patient suffering from an incurable and painful disease or an irreversible coma. With this definition being a more up-to-date description of the procedure, the case of David Goodall was notable in the Australian medical and ethical history, as he was the first patient to undertake this procedure due to old age rather than a terminal illness. David Goodall's case challenges the conditions under which people should be permitted to access assisted dying and raises questions regarding the intrinsic value of human life, individuals' right to choice, as well as how this causes implications within the laws of religious populations.
Euthanasia is a voluntary choice where a person chooses to end their own life with the help of modern-day medicine. It is a painless killing of an individual by choice. David Goodall was a 104-year-old man who believed in euthanasia and decided to end his life in 2018. Towards the end of David's life, he mentioned that his recent life had not been enjoyable and that he was tired of living and felt like he had achieved everything he wanted to in his life. The beliefs of utilitarianism align with the idea of euthanasia, as the fundamental concepts revolve around the idea that we should make decisions based on the greater good for the greater population. In correlation, euthanasia encourages individuals to make decisions that support their wants without impacting the greater population. This argument is demonstrated through Goodall's decision to proceed with euthanasia. This benefited his wants, as he believed he fulfilled his life's goals and aspirations, and he was no longer experiencing a high quality of life due to deteriorating eyesight and mobility. He stated that he does not believe anyone else's choice or input should be involved in choosing euthanasia to end his life. From a utilitarian perspective, this case doesn't negatively impact a greater population. Therefore, it is not a valid argument, as it is not ethically wrong.
From a deontologist's view, human life itself has intrinsic value. In the case of David Goodall, yes, he may not have been experiencing the highest quality of life, he had deteriorating eyesight and mobility, and he was autonomous in his decision-making, but he wasn't terminally ill. Decreased eyesight and mobility is a physiological process that the majority of elderly experience, yet they can still live a fulfilling and happy life. Euthanasia cheapens life and completely disregards the morality and value of human life. There needs to be more thought towards how this defines us and our values as human beings. Furthermore, when taking into account our younger generations living with disabilities entailing decreased functional capacity and vision, arguing in support of euthanasia would encourage these individuals to prematurely end their lives as a result of disability or impairment that can be lived with. With this argument in mind, by introducing and normalising euthanasia, we are unintentionally decreasing the value we place on human life. By extension, it advocates that human life can be thrown away when faced with a condition or impairment we may never recover from. Therefore, taking the route of euthanasia is morally and ethically wrong.
The healthcare system is constantly burdened with new diseases and increasing patient numbers. The struggle to prolong an individual's life adds to this burden. Prior to high-risk surgeries, patients are presented with the opportunity to sign a DNR, do not resuscitate. Further, patients also have the ability to determine when they are to be taken off life support or whether they would like life-saving measures to be taken. When put into perspective, the act of ending one's life by personal decision and signing a DNR or declining life-saving measures are all the same. Euthanasia allows for a cost-effective way of relieving patients from their discomfort in continuation of their own life. A 2019 survey in Australia shows that 95% of non-religious people supported euthanasia, 3% were neutral, and 2% disagreed. A survey of people who identified with a religion was also performed, showing an average of 74% of individuals supporting the idea of euthanasia, 9.35% were neutral, and 15% were against this idea. This demonstrates the idea of the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
With the legalisation of euthanasia comes undermining of all previous funding and care that has already been poured into suicide management, mental health, psychiatric care, and healthcare. Where euthanasia is legal, such as in the Netherlands, Colombia, and Belgium, where there is no age restriction on who can apply to the process, strong correlations have been discovered regarding the number of mentally ill patients requesting euthanasia. For example, the Federal Control and Evaluation Committee on Euthanasia in Belgium reported that 3% of euthanasia cases were linked to mental disorders, not terminal illness. The records show that psychologically suffering patients who requested euthanasia between 2007 and 2011 were most commonly found to have treatment-resistant mood disorders and personality disorders. The significant societal implications of legalizing procedures such as euthanasia to patients who, like David Goodall, are not terminally ill are dangerous to our younger generations, where symptoms of depression and the prevalence of self-harm have almost doubled from 2005 to now. As can be seen from the experience of other countries, it is a slippery slope when introducing euthanasia and formulating rules around to whom it may and may not be granted to is difficult. A suicide attempt is considered a psychiatric emergency. The question is, how will the legalization of euthanasia support our mentally ill populations? We need to consider the human population as a whole and how committed our healthcare system should be to supporting our physical and mentally ill populations by introducing euthanasia.
Most of the time, patients with chronic illnesses or degenerative diseases often have full-time carers carrying this caregiver's burden. This impacts caregivers in financial, emotional, physical, and mental domains, as they often petition to support the Right to Die campaign. Caregivers are exposed to seeing people struggle firsthand with their individual situations, and some view it as cruel to keep an individual alive if they don't want to be. Refusing healthcare has always been a given right for any patient with any condition. It is a well-recognised law, and recognition of this right needs to be viewed the same for cases of euthanasia. Furthermore, certain cases of euthanasia and maintaining an individual's right to die can provide opportunities to advocate for organ transplants. Through this act, the greater good is provided for the greater population, being the organ receiver and their loved ones, while allowing the donor to pass peacefully with dignity and good conscience. Not only does this provide the individual with the right to die, but it also provides another individual with the right of life.
Some interesting moral issues raised by David Goodall's case include whether it is acceptable for an individual to choose to end their life or not, who is eligible for this procedure, and who determines the criteria regarding patients' eligibility. Most religions live with the principle that thou shalt not kill, a rule that majority would agree with. From a deontologist's perspective, following generally accepted laws will produce the morally correct outcome regardless of the circumstance.
I personally believe that the morality of the procedure of euthanasia is defined by the situation. It should not be openly accepted and celebrated for every individual, no matter the circumstances. If this is the case, individuals with mental health illnesses or physical disability will not be encouraged to recover, but to give up, which completely contradicts the mentality of suicide is not the only way out, and all the work and finances the government has put towards helping individuals to keep living through hard times and illness. This would prevent people from living their best life if they go through something difficult and choose to end their life there. Euthanasia in some cases is morally wrong as it cheapens life and contradicts the value or principle many people hold that human lives have value. It is understandable, and I personally would consider it moral to give the choice of euthanasia to the elderly who firstly have consented to it, have been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and finally there is no possibility of their health or quality of life improving.
I personally believe that euthanasia is a highly complex concept, and my opinion on the morality of the procedure is dependent on the situation. In cases of mental illness and patients who don't have terminal illnesses, I don't believe euthanasia should be granted, as these individuals may not be in a sound state of mind to make such an important and irreversible decision. However, for cases of elderly individuals and terminally ill patients who cannot be helped, I believe that euthanasia should be acceptable and offered to specific individuals who are not and will never return to being able to engage in a certain quality state of life, as I've witnessed how much of a burden and honestly how heartbreaking it is to see a loved one slowly deteriorate with no form of help or prospect of a better future.
In my opinion, the moral dilemma of euthanasia has both positive and negative perspectives. However, the prolonged burden of an ill patient is inhumane. I believe that the patient should have a choice, and ultimately, after a long period of time, the chronic pain not only impacts the physical well-being of the person, but also their emotional and mental well-being. This would therefore be a reasonable response to complete this procedure. However, there should be a criteria in which only certain people should be able to access euthanasia. Patients who are not in the right state of mind or have been diagnosed with a mental illness should not be able to proceed with this procedure, as it would be an act of assisted murder.
Euthanasia is a complex issue which holds many controversial arguments. In my opinion, the decision to participate in euthanasia is solely dependent on the individual and their needs. The morality of this dilemma revolves around the opinion of other people, including their religious beliefs. Whilst it is imperative to empathise with the family and loved ones of the individual, the happiness of the patient should be considered with the highest priority. Quality of life is important to happiness, and taking away someone's decisions and independence makes for a quick pathway to losing who we are as an individual. Our identity is made up of our ability to make these decisions. Being able to decide to terminate one's life is vital in preserving the freedom we have as people to make our own choices. That being said, I do believe it is also imperative that we consider the circumstances surrounding an individual's choice. For example, people who are not within their right mind should have professionals to guide them through this decision and, if needed, intervene until they are able to make a decision when deemed mentally stable. This would help to preserve life and the meaning behind it.